Casual is such a loaded word. In the game community, its use is mixed. A casual game is often treated as not worth any serious amount of thought or given any value. A casual gamer is often someone who doesn't have the time, ability, or dedication to become extremely skilled at a particular game or genre. The word casual is a bit unique among hobbies in that way for gaming. The occasional guitarist who isn't very good but plays for fun isn't looked down on for it. The team of mid-30s playing below amateur slow pitch, or the drunk buddies playing pool on a Friday night. Folks who prefer more traditional mainstream board games like Clue amid a sea of Settlers of Catan, or a high skill ceiling game like chess or Go. For some reason, video games bring out the fighting side of people, and those casual players, casual games, or casual difficulty modes within games are treated like the nerd at school. Where it comes to skill, most of the time it takes more hours than nearly anyone can devote to master anything, gaming included. While the old 10,000 hours to consider yourself a master at something is a gross oversimplification, it's not an unreasonable bar to use to at the very least describe proficiency, if not mastery. And if you can devote the time necessary to get that good at something, that's fantastic. However, it's entirely possible to spend that much time on something without attaining anything approaching mastery. By way of example, there's little to no chance, despite me having 1,400 hours in Beat Saber, that I have any chance of measuring up against someone in their late teens or early 20s who spent the same amount of time and is chasing high scores. Why? Well, even though I've certainly got a competitive streak where it comes to Beat Saber, I'm not after a high skill ceiling. I'm not replaying songs again and again to perfect them, and frankly, after 2 torn rotator cuff injuries, my personal skill ceiling is simply lower. By the same token, I've got 212 hours in The Binding of Isaac. I don't know whether that qualifies me out of casual, I suspect so, but that barometer is so hard to read these days, and much like whales, the bar is different from person to person. But I still play the game exclusively with the item mod because I have no interest in trying to memorize the ever-expanding item pool or keep a wiki page open so that I can figure out how to not torpedo the fun that I'm having. What I find particularly odd about players looking down on other players, either for their level of commitment to a game or their level of commitment to improvement at that game, is that it's happening so often. You would think that if it was really, really high-skilled players raising issues with casual players, that there would be far fewer of them, because let's be honest, averages do exist. Not everyone can be highly skilled because high skill loses its value if it's normal. The reason I suspect is a bit more selfish. It could also be rooted in the Dunning-Kruger effect, which, for those not familiar, is the tendency for people of low skill to estimate their own skill much higher than it actually is. Wouldn't that be poetic? The idea that the hardcore gamer versus casual gamer situation is really just a bunch of people overestimating how good they really are. I know that games like Dark Souls have a reputation for being difficult, but having spent my time with them, they're really more an exercise in observation and patience than they are a high skill ceiling. Everybody wants to be part of an elite group though, and thus the legend of From Software was born. Video games do encourage this sort of behavior though to some extent. Achievements, for example, become bragging rights to those who care about them. Completionists, speedrunners, and high skill ceiling gamers have a serious advantage on the streaming platforms. The reason is obvious, because gamers like watching people who are really good at something do the really good thing. It doesn't take a genius to see that connection, whether video games, football, golf, curling, poker, you name it. The difference with video games, though, to some extent, are all of the other ways the game industry divides gamers up. The special profile border that signifies the leaders of the pack, the bronze, silver, gold, diamond, extra diamond, ultra, titanium ladders, occasionally somewhat nebulous on the number of players in each tier. The skins that are exclusive to the best of the best, if only for a short period of time. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this division is some nefarious thing, but it certainly does a good job of taking advantage of human nature, turning non-game aspects into a game in and of themselves. Where the real crux of the issue comes, though, I feel, is that this us versus them attitude within gaming is a little short-sighted, a social media trend that is likely to continue. Let's take Dark Souls 3 as an example, one of those games where the concept of a casual or easy mode brings up so much anger. It's difficult to sort out a precise number given differences in platform and the multiple ending scenarios, but estimates generally run from 35 to 45% of players having actually finished Dark Souls 3, meaning that From Software made a game where conservatively at least half of the player base didn't even see the end of the product, much less the whole thing given side bosses and side areas. To take that a step further, and not in a good direction in my view, if you look at the Steam achievements, about 36% of Dark Souls 3 players didn't defeat Vort of the Boreal Valley, which for those who aren't interested in and don't know much about Dark Souls 3, is only the second boss in the game. That doesn't mean in any way that that silent majority of players who did not beat the game could not beat the game, or, to take my example of even just the second boss, it just means that they didn't. Maybe they stopped having fun, maybe they got busy, maybe a new game came out and they never came back. And since they couldn't refund it after 2 hours, refunds, here we go again, the game just languishes in their library. Who knows? There will definitely be a portion who got frustrated with the difficulty and decided it wasn't worth grinding though. The series may not be the greatest example to use here because the combination of cult hit status of Dark Souls 1, Bloodborne marketing push with Sony, and Dark Souls 3 viral success certainly aren't what would be considered normal for game sales. The believed difficulty definitely hasn't hurt the game, and in fact the get good nonsense has contributed significant viral success. Could well be the reason that many people even tried the game in the first place. But I do like to use them because my opinion on this frosts people a little bit, and I do know the games fairly well, sans Dark Souls 2. Like I said, I don't consider them particularly difficult, just requiring patience and time. And I think including an easy mode is not just a good idea for gamers, but a smart idea for the developers. A factual claim that I can make is that the majority of revenue that From Software made on the Soulsborne series came from people who did not finish the games. To take that a step further, I think it's also safe to say that a majority of revenue they made on those games came from casual gamers, simply because a majority of all gamers are casual. Remember, gaming is a hobby. If you follow subreddits or YouTube channels regularly, you're an enthusiast at the very least. Gamers in general trend towards low weekly playtime by majority. Limelight Network's State of the Game Industry study separates out types of gamers, and when you combine novice and casual gamers together, comes in at roughly 80% of the entire market. More specifically, globally, gamers playing less than 4 hours a week comprise almost half. According to research firm NPD, heavy gamers playing 15 hours a week or more in the US account for only about 20% of the market in the country. Now, don't take this as an argument that any specific game should be tailored to those people, but rather a general indication that developers do want these players, for simple revenue reasons. If you're targeting a more hardcore player, then it is an immediate limitation being placed on your potential customer base. The video game industry is kept alive and pushed to further success by the casual player. Obviously, somebody is more likely to purchase a product if they enjoyed the product that came before. This means that if more people were able to have played through and enjoyed more of Dark Souls 1, those same people would have gone on to buy Dark Souls 2, and so on. And if the hardcore market is small, and very likely hyper-consolidated to a relatively small number of games like Dota 2 and Fortnite with enormous player counts, their time is already pretty heavily booked as it is. So why all the fuss about easy modes? There's an element of prestige, I suppose, in defeating a difficult game, even more so when you can finish it on a hard or hardcore sort of mode. Whether that prestige is public or just a warm fuzzy feeling inside doesn't likely matter that much. So those who can play difficult games feeling like others must be able to do the same thing or else it demeans the skilled player's achievement is a little bit ridiculous. There's also the argument that inclusion of an easier difficulty could demean the overall experience of the game, if the game itself was balanced around that easy mode and beefed up later for harder versions. Generally, developers build to an intended difficulty and then modify up and down to hard and easy modes respectively, though. The core argument here is that many of the big budget games that we get every year only work precisely because of mass market appeal. Without that 80% of casual and novice players, the AAA blockbusters wouldn't make enough money to justify continuing. We can make snide comments all we want about how the AAA market is a problem, and in many respects it is, but it's also the primary reason why the game industry has grown to the size that it is, with the immense number of gamers that it has. Barring notable exceptions, which are less predictable than lightning in a bottle, making games that cost tens of millions of dollars without at least partially targeting casual players is financial suicide. For me, though, this is ultimately all about self-interest. Gamers want more of their favorite games, and the single best way to ensure that you get more of your favorite game is when it sells really well. The trouble is, to sell really well, you need a lot of customers, most of which, statistically, are casual players. What do you think about how gamers use the term casual, or whether games should or should not have easy modes baked in? Let's chat about it in the comments below. My name's Tarmack, and that's all I have to say.